Good. Hi. I'm Paul Fanlon, the editor and publisher of the Capital Times. I'd like to welcome you to our first ever executive breakfast. Our program today features Aaron Jagdfeld, President and CEO of Generac Power Systems. Generac is the nation's leading provider of emergency power generators and is based in Waukesha. And I followed Aaron, I've read a lot about him and watched him in other presentations and talked to him this morning. You're in for a real treat today, I can guarantee you. It should be fascinating. Just a bit of background on this event. Today's breakfast is an outgrowth of Cap Times Idea Fest, which we've been presenting every fall since 2016. As many of you know, our Idea Fest focuses primarily on politics and public affairs topics. We decided to split this out in creating a new business event and make it statewide in focus, not exclusively or even primarily about business in Madison and Dane County. So our goal in this program will be to do this 4 times a year and bring some of Wisconsin's most consequential business executives to Madison. Our guest today certainly qualifies in spades. We also have a terrific moderator. Mark Richardson is certainly that. His extensive credentials are listed in your program. Before I turn it over to Mark, I want to ask Andy Burrish to say a few words. Andy and UBS are sponsoring this program, and Andy helped develop the concept. Andy?
Hey, good morning, everyone. Thank you, Paul. I just want to say why we were behind this. Carson and our management team at UBS talked to the Ross McDuffie and Paul. I said, listen, the Cap Times is great, but too much politics. I hate politics. I'm sick of politics. All right, I said, we need to hear what's going on in Wisconsin, business leaders around the state that's helping the whole state, right? So let's bring in the big guns from around the state to talk about how they got through COVID. How are they growing in Europe? How are they, meeting all the challenges that benefit Wisconsin? I said, so we can have politics in another event, but I'd love to have 4 events where we come in and we talk about what's going on. Let's bring in people, the biggest leaders in Wisconsin, not Dane County. I can see them at Rotary, all right? What can we hear about that? So that's the purpose of our event. We'd like you to encourage others to buy tables and come to this so we can get this. They've had an event like this in Milwaukee for 25 years. They have 400 people at their events. So this is a great debut, but I also think that over the next 5 years, we could double or triple the size and really learn what's going on in our state. And that everything kind of centers on Madison so much, but we need to know how are other communities and businesses growing with it. So anyhow, thank you for coming. I appreciate your support. I appreciate UBS for paying for this tonight. But nonetheless, everyone, thank you for coming.
One bit of housekeeping. If you parked in the ramp, you won't have to pay on the way out. The gates will be up, and it's paid for by your sponsor, UBS. So on to the program. I just want to take just a second to sincerely thank you for coming out to this event on a rainy morning, and it's a new idea, and it just means the world to all of us that you're here this morning. So thank you for that. And now I'll pass it on to Aaron and Mark, and please give them a warm welcome. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Paul. Can you guys hear okay? Good, we're good. So we're talking about politics today?
That's what I thought. I thought that's what we said, Mark, right? This is going to be a political debate.
I don't think we prepped
Sorry,
for
Andy.
No, but thank you, Paul, for the opportunity to moderate this series, and thank you guys for coming out today. Remember when we used to come out in person to everything? Remember that? How weird did it feel for some of you to get up this morning and get through all that and get here, right? So thank you for being here, and for those of you, thank you for being online. Andy, Aaron, thank you for taking your time out, swinging west, and coming and talking to us. The more I did research on your company, the more impressed I got and I became. You're doing some crazy things. You're an old school company, but you're a new school company, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. But for those of us who don't and didn't do some research, tell us about Generac, core business, footprint, employee number, that kind of thing.
Yeah, no, so Generac, and again, we're a Waukesha-based company, so I'm not sure how many people out in Dane County actually know about us. We do have some facilities we have in Jefferson County. We actually have 6 facilities primarily in Wisconsin, but we're a manufacturer. We date back to 1959. Our roots, a gentleman by the name of Bob Kern started the company, an engineer, came over from a company called Waukesha Engine, just down the road from us, and decided to start a backup power company, basically building generators for primarily used in emergencies, right? So when your power goes out, a generator is used to provide and stand in for the utility. And that has been our primary business for about 60 years. And we've expanded, of course, serving residential markets, but also commercial and industrial markets. And we've also expanded globally. So we're a global company today. This year we'll approach about $5 billion in sales. About 20% of that is outside the U.S., and Canada. We have about 10,000 employees, so it's grown considerably over its 60-year history. Bob sold the company back in 2006 to private equity, so I was the CFO of the company at the time. I'm a finance guy by background, UW-Whitewater grad, CPA, and have been at the company for 28 years. And he sold the company in 2006 to private equity, and then we took it public in 2010. So we're a public company, New York Stock Exchange listed. So that's kind of the one-pager, if you will, on the company.
Sure. No, appreciate that. I always knew you sort of as the generator company, right? And we had a prep call last week, and we talked about some of the new things you're doing. And so I want to get to that in a little bit. Like I said, you're sort of old school manufacturing, but you called yourself an energy technology company. So how did that happen?
So, as we think about the future, we love our emergency generator background, and it's actually a fantastically growing business in and of itself. As you can imagine, we're all so dependent on a continuous source of power in our, at our homes, at our businesses. It's a critical element, especially as we continue to use technology and we electrify everything, inclusive of transportation at some point. A continuous source of power is going to be critical. That said, we saw the opportunity with Generac, the brand that we have, the distribution we've built out, our technical capabilities in understanding codes and standards and power delivery systems and power conversion systems and electronics. We saw an opportunity to expand our market opportunity and really go into some of the newer spaces where power is being generated on the rooftop with solar, where power is being stored in batteries as battery technology continues to improve and advance. And some of that, in all honesty, is a little bit of a defensive mechanism. If battery technology advances cost-wise and performance-wise to a much greater degree than it is today, could it displace an internal combustion engine-driven generator at some point? Possibly. But those types of technologies are things that we felt were important to explore. And in exploring them, we felt that we could bring those to market in a way that helped us continue to grow the company and serve a bigger market. So today, in fact, we've even built on that in the last year and a half. We bought a smart thermostat company, a company called Ecobee up in Toronto, Canada. So we want to build out basically an ecosystem within the home around energy. Your thermostat controls your HVAC and your furnace, which takes up 40% of your energy use in your home. So having control of that one single device on the wall is a way for us to continue to interact with homeowners, but also to help you conserve, be a better conservationist in your own home, to save money, to improve your comfort. Those are the things that we're after as a company, and that really has led us down this path to, I'll say, evolve into what we've been referring to as more of an energy technology company and beyond just a kind of nuts and bolts generator manufacturer.
Right. Thank you. No, evolution. I think that's the key, right? Today, no matter what business you're in. You've, like you said, that's not your core business. That hadn't been your core business for 50 plus years.
Right.
So over the last 3 years, you've acquired 10 companies to get to jumpstart, to be a catalyst in this tech, in the tech space. So question, how has that impacted your culture? First of all, congratulations for surviving 10 acquisitions in 3 years. How has that impacted your culture, the old traditional business?
Yeah, it's interesting because we've actually done 28 acquisitions over 10 years. The last 10, over the last 3 years, were more focused on the energy technology space. Previous to that, it was building out our geographic footprint. It was giving us some additional adjacencies with products in our more to our core. But all of those acquisitions, and I would say even more so the last 10, being more focused in the tech world, It's not been easy. I would say, any acquisition's hard. And the integration of, in particular, these are companies that are founder-led oftentimes. So, a founder had an idea, started the company, and at some point decided to monetize their life's work and sell the business. And oftentimes they stay with the company for a period of time, and they continue on running the company as they've operated it for the life of the company. And sometimes that differs in the way that we operate as a bigger entity. So you have just the basic integration effort is sometimes a challenging one, and then you have the culture point, which I think, Mark, you're hitting on, and that I think is always an issue when you acquire companies, but I would say even more so the companies we've been focused on the last 10, being in the technology space, that's a very different, the culture in technology companies is incredibly different from that of manufacturing companies. First of all, they don't manufacture. So, you have this kind of basic, difference, right, in terms of just the philosophical difference. A lot of times, even with Ecobee, the company we bought in Toronto that does smart thermostats, all of their manufacturing is outsourced. It's contract manufacturing. So they don't run any plants, right? They don't manage that type of a workforce. Right. We're built to manage thousands and thousands of people on a plant floor building products. And when you do that, when you're built that way, all of your HR policies, your philosophies they really come from the people who are clocking in every day at 7 a.m. for a hard day's work on a production line. And that is a lot of what is at the core of a manufacturing company. You buckle that to a technology company, and there's a lot of kind of differences there in the way you manage your workforce, the way that you interact, the HR policies. So we've had to do a lot of learning. And if we're truly going to be evolving into an energy technology company, this is a journey, and it's not going to happen overnight. And it's definitely going to be something that is, we're going to break some glass along the way. Mm-hmm. That's just what happens when you make these kinds of journeys. But the important thing is that we get to the end of that journey, and we get there in a way that is productive and positive, because it's really important that we get there. Because as a company, to say we want to just be a manufacturer in Wisconsin, I guess that would be good enough. We could continue to do that, and we'd be happy to do that. But I think there's so much more that we can bring to the world. And in some of the things that we're faced with and some of the areas that we're focused on in this energy technology business that we're creating are dealing with some pretty big issues like climate change and some other kind of wide-ranging topics that I think as a business, we've created a lot of passion within our own walls for people to say, we want to help solve the problem, not be part of the problem. So it's a really important journey that we're on. But it's not without its painful moments, I would say. For sure.
I think some of the employees probably of the companies you've acquired, you said clocking in at 7 a.m., some of those employees probably are just going to bed after writing code till 7 a.m.
That is true. And they would tell you, when I say they don't manufacture, they would say, no, we do. We write code. That is in and of itself manufacturing. We're making a product. And that's, again, it's a different mindset. As a manufacturer, 60 years, a Rust Belt, company, to think about programming and software as a product, as output, as manufacturing, takes a different, you've really got to set aside all of your...
Yeah, it's a real thing.
It's a real thing. You've got to set aside all those preconceived notions about, and it's about how people work too. To your point, some people like to do that overnight, and some people like to do that at different hours of the day. So the workday is completely different, and the way you manage that needs to be different as well.
And that was pre-COVID.
And that was pre-COVID. With COVID, it's just been a kind of a free-for-all, actually.
And I think everybody in here is probably, has whiplash as to how their operations changed during COVID, and I guess we're not completely out of it yet, but we're calling it post-COVID. So post-COVID.
That's a positive direction.
Yeah, that's a good thing. So a couple things happened, certainly during COVID. Obviously a lot of negatives, but some positives in how and what we work on and how we work. And one of those things that I think that's come is a reckoning of some of our old school thinking, our old school operating, and being forced, quite frankly, to think of things differently and look at things differently. And one of those things, I think, with the murder of George Floyd is DEI. That's one of those changes that the whole world was sitting home watching. when that went down. And so there's been a reaction to that here in our private sector. It's like, hey, we have to be part of the solution. I know you guys are doing some things in that space. Tell us a little bit about your DEI journey and what that has meant to the company.
Yeah, it's a really important topic, I think, for every business, and not only businesses, any organization, really, right? Public, private, not-for-profit. I mean, everybody is I think, grappling with, whether it's George Floyd. I mean, there's so many high-profile examples of some of the injustices that, and that's just, we could go on. We could take the rest of the morning and talk about that. But I think, it really gave us an opportunity to pause and reflect, and we had the time to do that. And as a business, for our company, we're out in Waukesha County, and demographically speaking, I think we always felt like, well, we hired the demographics around us. And when you think about it, and when we think about it, and we thought deeply about this, we were kind of hiding behind that. We were kind of making an excuse for why the demographics of the company and our employee population looked the way that it did. And when you really kind of take that and you kind of are introspective about that, and you think about what are you trying to get as an outcome. And diversity is such an important. I grew up on the north side of Milwaukee, so I grew up in 49th and Burleigh, and a really diverse neighborhood, really close to the Sherman Park neighborhood, Sherman Boulevard. And a great area. I have awesome memories growing up there as a kid. And the diversity I can remember at my elementary school, William T. Sherman Elementary on 51st. It's awesome. I love the school right over by St. Joseph's Hospital there. And the diversity in the neighborhood there was fantastic. And the friends and friendships that I forged and how that molded me, just in terms of the importance of having diversity and just the quality of the conversation you get when you have different voices at the table. And that can be in business. Again, it can be in a not-for-profit. It can be, it can be at your dinner table. I mean, the quality of the conversation is up, and you take it up a notch when you bring different voices in. And when you bring your conversation up a notch, the outcomes, and this is particularly important in business, the outcomes become better. You get better outcomes when you have different voices at the table. And so this is an area that we focused on as a company. We had been focusing on it, but again, I think if we were really honest with ourselves, we weren't as purposeful about it as we needed to be. And Mark and I had a really good conversation about this last week when we were prepping for this. And I think Mark used the word intentional, and I think that's absolutely the right word to use. You've got to be intentional in your actions, because if you just let it happen, right? Because you think, well, that's what the population is around us, and that's just what's going to be. Well, then that is what it'll be, and you won't make any change. You won't make any substantive change. You won't make any substantive advancement in that effort. And so we've actually brought in people. We've hired people who are actually focused on nothing more. I'm a big believer that if you want to get something done in the company or anywhere, you have to have somebody waking up every day thinking about it. That's got to be their job, right? So we actually have a director of DE&I who is purposefully every day thinking about ways to help us be more intentional in our actions. But it's been quite a journey. We have a long way to go, but it's such an important topic, I think, for every business and for everybody in this room to really focus on.
Well, thank you for that. I'm sure it's not been easy. Like you said, we're gonna break some glass in a lot of different areas, right? And that's how we evolve. One of the ways I know that you're pipelining talent, you have a program that started with you guys, and now it's expanded beyond you guys. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I think you're referring to the GPS program, which is awesome. So I don't know, some of you guys that have businesses, you may have heard of GPS. It's a great organization that pairs with businesses to help. At least it started out. We started it actually. This is going back almost 20 some years ago now. We were focused on at-risk kids in high school who were in danger of not graduating. Right, so just the kids, they're good kids, but for whatever reason, they didn't learn in a classroom setting, in a traditional classroom setting, the way that other people do. And so they actually learned more hands-on, right? It was more of a vocational learning approach. And we saw this as kind of a gap in the school systems, actually, that the school systems didn't actually know how to deal with these kids, right? They basically, they didn't graduate. They flunked out. And some of them went on to, maybe they get their GED, maybe do something like that, but a A lot of them never did. And we were seeing these kids come through later on as prospective employees for our shop floor. And we'd be like, well, why don't you have a high school graduation? Why don't you have a degree? And they'd give us the whole story. A lot of them come from homes where they don't have a traditional home setting or two parents. You don't even really need a traditional setting. You just need a good foundation. And they didn't have that at home for one reason or another. So we started this group up called GPS. And GPS was focused on working with local school districts in the Waukesha County area to really target those at-risk kids and give them a job, so they work half the day. And then we put classrooms in our facilities. And they would get kind of traditional instruction. We had teachers, licensed instructors that would come in and give them that instruction. And it was a 2-year program, so we got them when they were juniors. And it was amazing to see them walk across the stage with all of their classmates and get their degree. And just the sense of pride that they and their parents had, it was really moving. And it's been an awesome program, and this program has grown from not just Waukesha County and not just Generac, but now statewide here in Wisconsin. And actually, they're looking to go on a national basis. If you're a business owner and you haven't looked into this before, and it's gone now, it's expanded beyond just at-risk kids. It's also now focused more on children that want to have a vocational education path. We talk about this, that we're so focused as parents on sending our kids to that 4-year college, right? That college prep track. And what's happening out there is we have a lot of kids that probably would be better off in a trade school environment. We need more electricians. We need more plumbers. There's no shame in a job like that.
There's pride in that, right?
There should be. There really should be.
And so the Kool-Aid that we drank, coming up, which is not a bad one, but the fact of the matter is, a trades profession is you should have just as much pride in a trades profession as you do in any other profession. And we have a need. We have a need in the trades and construction, and that those are aging out.
They are. They're aging out, and we're looking at the future, and we're seeing huge gaps, even in our workforce. When we think about the people who operate some of the higher end equipment on our shop floor, CNC pieces of equipment, automated manufacturing equipment, we really need people who have skills. Sheet metal fabricators, welders. These types of roles are, for some reason, I think as a society we've almost kind of I don't want to say we've demonized those roles, but we don't hold them up on the same level as somebody who went to school for 4 years at Madison or Whitewater. But I'll tell you, there's a lot of people who got those 4-year degrees, and today they're not even close to what the one thing they do have is they have the debt, right?
Yeah.
They definitely have the debt, but they're maybe doing something completely different from what they went to school and be trained to do. And there's a happiness problem there for a lot of folks. And I think that, again, we have to, I think hard about advancing trade schools. It's a shame, even, I know we're not talking politics, but the idea of forgiving student loan debts didn't extend to trade schools. Why not? Yeah. I mean, I think that's a miss, right? I think that's an opportunity area for I think a wide swath of the population to look at as a better path for them. It's not for everybody, but I think it's it's a path that should be looked at more and should certainly be held at least in the same level of respect that you see with a 4-year degree.
Yeah, you said a happiness problem, and it's funny because you think, well, it's a job. You're not supposed to be happy.
That's why they call it work. That's what I tell people.
You're supposed to do your job, right? And I think certainly some things have changed as to what talent is looking for. Talent mobility today is greater than it's ever been. I was having a conversation with some guys from an Alliant Energy earlier before, saying his kids look at what they want to do for work and for a living differently than he did, and he's 48, right? And so the kids, how do you tell a 15, 16, 17-year-old that no, you're not supposed to be happy in your work. You're supposed to just do your work. Right. Well, no, that's what we were taught, right?
Right.
Like when
very different today.
Somebody's interviewing for a job, and then they start asking you about PTO and work from home, and is this remote, or do you expect me to come in?
Unlimited vacation.
Yeah.
We hear that too. Like, really?
And you're like, well, wait a second, time out. I would have just been happy for the job offer, right? And we move on from there. But so that you take that and you throw that forward, and talent attraction. and even in professional positions, not just the manufacturing and the trades.
Absolutely.
So how are you guys? Acquiring talent? I looked on your website. I love the fact that it's modular, right? And you've got your, I think it's 9 different job categories.
We do.
Do I have that?
Yeah.
And then, but you also have it where you can change the language so that it's in Spanish.
Correct.
I thought that was very cool.
Yep.
What other things are you doing to attract talent and acquire talent as you grow at a crazy clip?
Yeah, I think this is a huge issue for us. It's a huge issue for everybody today, right? I mean, the access to talent, but for us in particular, it's almost double-edged. We're in a war for talent because unemployment's still low, and coming out of COVID, we've got this whipsaw effect with the economy that we're working through. So it's been really difficult to recruit and retain people. Just even if we were just trying to maintain a static level of people. But our big challenge is we're trying to grow. We've hired over 2,000 people in the last year and a half. So 20% increase in, actually 25% increase in our employment. And just to go out and find those folks, and obviously you're taking somebody away from somebody else. I mean, let's be honest, it's a competitive environment. And so what are we doing to do that? I mean, we've had to really up our game, right? I mean, we've also had to up our profile. So, the comp and benefits, those are kind of table stakes, right? Like you've got to be at least market for comp. We used to kind of say, well, we kind of pay on the low side of market, but we make it up with growth and opportunities. Yeah, no, you can't do that. That won't get people in the door the way that it might have before. And you still have to give opportunity, still a big part of the equation and a big part of what we sell to people when we're talking about where we're going as a company. And definitely, if you're a prospective employee, looking at a company that's growing versus one that's not, looking at a company that's in an industry that's growing versus one that's not, those should be kind of important factors in your decision. But we've had to take our game much higher. So as a company, we always prided ourselves that we were kind of this quiet company out in Waukesha County, and we're out in western Waukesha County, by the way. Anybody, show of hands, anybody know where Genesee Depot is? Okay, there's more people than I thought would know that, because it's a really small town. You blink and it's gone. We're very close to Genesee Depot, and so we're pretty far out west. We're asking people to drive quite a ways, but people don't really know us. We weren't on the radar screen, but we made a pretty conscious decision a couple of years ago to change that because of this idea of needing to recruit talent for our business, and the fact that as we continue to grow, the level of talent that we need within the business grows along with that. And so we had to kind of change our gaze. We had to look up in terms of where we wanted to go with the company. And so we decided to do something that was completely outside of our character, and we went and put our name on a stage down at Summerfest, at the Generac stage. We actually took the Harley stage. Actually, there's a weird little thing going on down in the Summerfest grounds. If you look at it, it's kind of the old line businesses rolling over into more of the new line businesses that are kind of taking over the grounds there. And it's kind of an interesting dynamic in and of itself to analyze. But we would have never done that before. And that's big table stakes for us. It's a lot of money, a lot of sponsorships we're getting involved in. We've always been involved in the community, but we've had to expand what our definition of community was to include Milwaukee County. Again, we were always big proponents of what went on in Waukesha County, but we've had to expand that. We've had to expand even here in Dane County. We're advertising here in Dane County because some of our plants are out in Jefferson and Jefferson County. So, this is a great kind of population center for us to pull from for our operations. But we've had to rethink almost everything we've done. And again, comp and benefits, table stakes. Everything else beyond that, the flexibility of work, we renovated our headquarters to give people, and that was pre-COVID, and then, nobody came. So, that's been somewhat disappointing.
The ROI just changed.
The ROI changed on that math, but I still love it. It's great. It's great to go there.
You're
Get a cup of coffee. I'm there.
You're looking around.
I was literally during COVID. I was sitting there by myself. The lights kept going out because they would turn out when there's no movement. I'm like, why is it so dark in here? There's nobody here.
Well, I think you hit on it, right? So it's first it's the change in mindset, and then it's the investment to sort of change trajectory, to shift.
Exactly, and it's you have to be, again, purposeful in that investment if you're going to make it happen.
Yeah, and so it's not unlike a lot of Wisconsin companies, and I think probably Midwest companies. We're quiet. We don't talk a lot about ourselves or what we do. We don't ring the bell. But like you said, we're also competing globally.
We are, yeah, and that's been a big change for us. We've call it tooting our own horn, right? Like we don't.
Right, like it's a bad thing.
Exactly. You almost feel it's a weird kind of humbleness.
People on the coast are like, what? You got this? You're not even talking about it.
Exactly. No, people on the coast would celebrate every success and everything they've done right and done well, and we should as well, right? Because we are competing for talent with a lot of those types of companies, and I think talking about our success and being proud of that and talking about it openly and not being ashamed somehow that we're
Right.
we're kind of
we're
boasting.
super
or,
successful.
Yeah,
we're growing it.
yeah. I mean, and I think there's also a fear. You mentioned this before, Mark. In Wisconsin in particular, and the Upper Midwest, we're a little bit afraid to fail, right? So, and I think there's a fear that if you get boastful and you talk about all your successes, that by the way, in business there are cycles, and there are two sides to every coin. Every time there's an up cycle, there's a down cycle coming. And it's by the way, that's coming next year. If anybody in this room hasn't seen that yet, it's going to be a tough ride going into 2023. Sure. But we're always worried about that, right? Like if we talk about our successes, then are we ready to talk about our failures as well? And I think that's probably what keeps us from doing that.
Yeah, but if we're not failing, then are we trying hard enough?
That our view
are
is
we risking enough?
you have to have a certain amount of risk. Like we say, look, you as a business leader or you head up a department or a function within the company, we like risk taking. Now, we don't want the kind of risks where you're going to bet the farm and you could blow up the company, right? Those are bad risks. There are big risks that have, bad outcomes, and you have to be careful about that. And you have to stick to, kind of our philosophies around business and the importance of safety and the importance of, integrity and things. Of course, you're not going to violate those. But taking risk, trying, maybe going into a new market, bringing a new product to market, trying a new technology, reorganizing your group to do something different, something bigger, doing something different with distribution. These are, innovation takes a lot of different forms. I think as a manufacturer, we always used to think innovation was the product and was only the product. But what I've learned in business is innovation extends to basically every corner of how you do business. And that's with your distribution and how you go to market, how you sell your products, of course, how you manufacture them, but really the workforce you put, the team you put on the field, all of that. You can be innovative about all of that. You don't have to stop at just the product. But it's a really critical thing to think about, and you have to take some risk, and you have to also be willing then to fail, because you're not going to, even the best hitters in baseball, bat 300, right? 3 out of 10 times they're hitting the ball. 7 out of 10 times they're out. Now you got to be a little bit better than that in business, by the way. If you're 3 out of 10, you're not going to stay on our team for very long. But we used to say, you got to throw a lot of things against the wall, and if that one big idea can stick, that can be a game changer. But if you never throw anything against the wall, you never find out. And so it's really critical that we put ourselves out there and that we feel comfortable taking some risk, and that we don't criticize failure to the point where people kind of crawl into their shell and they don't take any risk at all. So it's a balance, it's a fine line, but it's one of those things that I think it's a bit nuanced in business, but it's actually a really critical part, I think, of what separates companies that are growth companies versus companies that I think are kind of just subsisting and maintaining.
Right. No, appreciate that. A lot of the conversation today has been about sort of old and new, and that as we talked, and I like to, whenever we think about talent attraction or DEI, I don't like to think of things as good and bad. Sure, there are goods and bads in the world, right? And there are rights and wrongs. But I like to think of it as then and now. Then this is how we operated. Yep. Now this is how we're going to operate.
Yeah, it's great.
And so when I think of Generac and I think of then and now, and I was doing some research and saw you guys have a commitment to sustainability, right? And the environment. And then I thought, okay, manufacturing company, internal combustion engine, right? And so climate change. You've got sort of these worlds colliding, and tell me how you approach that, and how do you strategize being on either side of that coin?
Yeah, I think that has been for us part of this journey, right? Is the recognition that our core products are, they're engine-driven products. They burn diesel fuel, they burn natural gas, they burn gasoline, so fossil fuels, and they produce emissions that have contributed in some part to some of the challenges we're seeing with climate change. And I don't think there's any denying that anymore. The science is real. You can believe whatever sound bites you want to believe there, but the fact of the matter is the world's warming, and the air and the oceans, and that's creating some effects that are very visceral, around the just the severity of weather in particular, right? I mean, the hot spells are getting hotter and the cold spells are getting colder. The hurricanes seem to strengthen faster and impact with more ferocity than they did in the past. We're seeing things that we haven't seen. Those storms that used to happen every 100 years, those floods that happen every 100 years are happening every 5 years, or in some cases every year. And as a company, as we thought about this strategically, and this goes back about 5 years ago, we thought, well, where does that take us in the future? I mean, when we kind of put the big challenge out there, we said, I happen to think that one of the things that you can do with your management team is kind of scare them a little bit. What happens if we woke up, so this was the exercise, what happens if we woke up tomorrow and internal combustion engines were outlawed? What happens to the company? And everybody said, well, we take our ball and we go home. That's it, game over. And we said, okay, well, that certainly is one way to face that potential outcome. But what should we be doing today if that does become an outcome? And whether that's an outcome through an outright regulatory ban, or whether it's through incentive structures, right, that incentivize less carbon intense forms of energy in favor of the old, you talk about old and new, right, the old fuels, the real heavy stuff, the diesel fuels and things like that. What if at some point there's a carbon tax that might penalize the owners of our products, the operators of our products? And so we had to think long and hard about that, and that is what led us down the path to look at different technologies. We had already been looking at some of these technologies, but again, as an engineering company, we said, yeah, battery's just not ready for prime time. Okay, but could they be in 5 years or 10 years? They might not be ready today. I had a really interesting conversation a couple years back with a gentleman who was the CEO at Briggs & Stratton. And it was a great company, iconic company, 100-plus-year-old. Everybody knows Briggs & Stratton. Everybody probably has a product, maybe in their garage that, or their home, that has a Briggs & Stratton engine on it, right? World's largest engine company. They went bankrupt 2 years ago. Why'd they go bankrupt? Because they didn't see the transition that was happening in their core products. And I was talking to him, and I said, his name was Todd, and he's actually a really good guy. He's a finance guy, CPA. He went to Green Bay. That's probably why it didn't work out instead of Whitewater. But we love Green Bay. It's a great school. But
now we can't show this in Green Bay.
No, he's a great guy and a great company. But when we talked about the business, there was this. It's not a great experience mowing with a battery-powered mower that, it's not as powerful, it doesn't last as long, but that was then, and this is now. And so where's the technology going? And really in business, you have to be thinking about the future and not about the past. You can reflect on the past, but you absolutely have to be focused on where, it's the old adage, where's the puck going? And you have to be thinking about that. You have to be investing and putting, your time and effort into where the puck is going.
No, I appreciate that, and you said where the puck is. I've got some personal questions for you as far as sports and what did you do?
Looking forward to those.
And so, so maybe a hockey guy, I don't know, given the analogy. One other question. So, again, new, old, where's the business going? I want to get this right. Generac has long been a company of firsts. First to engineer an affordable home standby generator. First to develop an engine specifically for generator use, the rigors of generator use. #1 manufacturer of home backup generators, right? First.
Right.
If we were
we
sitting,
like winning, by the way.
Yeah, winning's good. Winning's good. Batting over 300 is good. But if we were sitting here 5 years from now, what other firsts would you like to be on that list?
Yeah, that's a great question. As we think about the future, some of the new businesses that we've acquired our way into and some of the new markets, much like our legacy businesses, where we are first, right? We're literally, the home standby generator market. These products that sit outside your home, use natural gas or LP fuel. It's a category we created 25 years ago. We took a risk, and we said, will homeowners want to own something like that? And we had a lot of naysayers within the company. Now, people aren't going to pay that kind of money for a permanently installed generator in their home. It's by far and away a huge part of our growth story as a company, and we're #1. We have 80% market share there. So what do we want to do in the future? I think the businesses we're going into around energy storage, the businesses we're going into around smart thermostats, this whole home energy ecosystem, right? The smart home energy system, and being a part of that and having the Generac brand be much more prominent in the eyes of homeowners, not just when the lights go out, but maybe when they adjust their thermostat, or when they think about the power that's coming off their rooftop, or how much power they're exporting back to Alliant or We Energies. And they're selling that power back to the grid for use by their neighbors or their community. We want to be a part of that. We think that that's an opportunity area that a lot of the things that are going to be needed to be successful there, we think we have that within our company. And so I would say in the future, to define success for us, is we'd stake out a #1 position in those markets as well. And it's not, the competitive landscape there is not it's not for the faint of heart. Tesla, right? That's one of our direct competitors on the battery side, right? Pretty formidable company. Elon Musk, a pretty formidable guy. They have a lot going for them. So that's something that when we think about the competitive landscape, it's going to be a more difficult journey for us, but definitely something that, as we think about the future, is going to be super critical to where we go as a company, 5, 10 years down the line.
That's I love the way you've got vision, and you're always looking around the corner. You're always looking down the road, which is a testament to your leadership and what you're bringing to the company. So we've talked a lot about the company, but we haven't talked a lot about the guy running the company. So I've got some rapid fire questions for you.
Okay.
Okay. So you mentioned Summerfest stage and the fact that you guys are sponsoring one of those stages. So first concert ever.
My first concert ever was The Who at Alpine Valley, 1987.
Right.
I couldn't hear for like 3 days after that. I had never heard anything like that before in my life. It was amazing.
Maybe permanently damaged.
Some life choices probably along the way too that have contributed to that.
Okay, The Who. Everybody, for those of you taking notes, the first concert, The Who. Sports. Any particular sport? Are you a hockey guy? You mentioned where the puck is going.
Yeah, I like hockey. I enjoy hockey. I'm not a hockey guy. I was track and field. So I ran track high school and college. So 4 years at Whitewater, D3. Went to D3 Nationals, long jumper. So I'm field events and a short sprinter. So that was my wheelhouse at the time.
So D3, no scholarship for you.
No scholarship. No, I wasn't that good. Would have loved to have had that opportunity, but did not. But I really wanted to continue on in athletics after high school, and Whitewater was a great place to do that.
For sure. So you mentioned you're a Milwaukee kid. So growing up, big family?
No, actually only one brother.
Okay.
So my family, my father comes from a big family. So he's from a family of 8.
So tons of cousins.
Tons of cousins, lots, big family gatherings. But our immediate family was just my brother and I. But we definitely got the big family experience, and it was a lot of it was German-Irish. So you can put those two combinations together, and you can imagine what family gatherings are like, right? Like. There's generally a lot of card playing going on, right? So I learned to play sheep's head and euchre at a very young age, but really a big family environment.
Sure. Now, what about your own family?
So my own family, I have 3 kids. 2 of them actually attended the University of Madison here. My oldest is now in her residency, so she graduated with her doctoral pharmacy degree just last May from Madison, and she's doing a residency in Milwaukee. She's getting married actually in 2 weeks.
Oh boy!
So I have one that's a kind of a big life event for any of you guys that have any kids. She's our oldest. Our middle one is he's out in Washington D.C. He also went to Madison, but he had a different track in mind. He started out, he wanted to be in biology, and I know my son pretty well, and I said, son, there's some math in that. What do you think about math? Just between you and I, it might not be one of your strongest subjects. He's like, no, I really, I think I can pick this up. All right, well, this maybe just,
pick it up.
He could be one of these kids that just maybe learns a little later. We found out he wasn't. Math was not his thing, but he had a passion for music, and so he got his degree in jazz piano from the university here, and so he had been playing classical piano since he was 4 years old. He's an incredibly accomplished pianist, and so he took that through, and he's out in Washington, D.C. now, and he's giving lessons to basically a lot of kids of senators and people of Congress and people in the government out there, so it's been fascinating. And then my youngest is, she's at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, and she's a senior this year. She's pre-med, so she's going to go on and hopefully do something great there, but she's a swimmer. My oldest was a swimmer, so those 2 were swimmers. My son, people would ask him, do you swim too? He said, no, I'm a floater. So he was big on floating, but my oldest, very accomplished swimmer here, swam for Madison, swam for the Badgers, was had opportunities to go to the Olympic trials twice in her career. And my youngest is also a D1 swimmer as well with Milwaukee with the Panthers. So it's been fun to kind of, we're a sports family, so to kind of keep that going has been a lot of fun.
A lot of swim meets through the years.
I've got one this weekend in Chicago, UIC. So we're going down to see the Flames and the Panthers battle it out.
And then a wedding the following weekend.
And then a wedding the folling weekend, which I'm
Well,
scared to death about.
Even
so.
more thankful for you taking some time and coming this
No
way.
worries, it's great.
So, another fantasy football player?
I am not a fantasy football player, and that probably is, I would love to. It's probably a consequence of time management.
gonna
for
say,
me.
with all your spare time.
It's really tough. Hobbies are tough for me.
Yeah. No, I was going to ask you how your team was doing, but clearly that's not going to happen.
That's
now.
not gonna happen.
You've ruined this interview, Aaron.
I'm sorry. Apologize.
So, Packer fan?
Big Packer fan. Yeah, that was fun this weekend.
Yeah,
So
well,
we shouldn't ever go back to London. We shouldn't do that. And we should learn to run the ball. I don't know if Rodgers is changing plays like the second half. How many 20-yard plus throws did he have that didn't connect? And you got to run the ball.
I
so.
feel your pain. I'm from the
painful.
Chicago area. I'm a Bears fan, so I too feel pain.
Yeah, that was a tough one.
Yeah, I
That
married
was
a
tough one.
Vikings fan. So
That's been a tough 20 years for you, though. I mean, at least we've had some. It hasn't been as tough for us.
Yeah,
So.
just get out of bounds, man. Just get out of bounds.
Just step out of
That's all you got
bounds,
to do.
please.
That's all you got to do.
Please.
Sorry, this has spiraled out of control. This is clearly turned.
gotta get
into-
control, Mark.
This has turned into a different interview. So I'm just time check. I don't know who's keeping time, but I could do this all day, and I probably would if someone doesn't stop me. There's probably a lot of questions from the audience, so
That'd be great.
I want to pause and maybe hand this mic to somebody that's gonna, or I can be Phil Donahue. I can run around. Any questions in the audience? Certainly you have a question for Aaron. Somebody does. Oh,
I'm still interested in that old generator business. I know you're talking about digitizing the grid, right? How many people are going to have a home gas-fired generator, do you think? I think it's like 5% now.
Yep, it's about 6% of homes today have one of these products, and that's, as I like to say, that's 94% of homes that are an opportunity for us. So that's something we talk about internally. People are like, we're already at 6%. It's millions of machines. So do you know how many houses there are in this country? I think people you lose perspective on the scale of the U.S. market alone, right? This is just drive from East Texas to West Texas. Just drive from North Florida to South Florida. I mean, the amount of housing and the amount of opportunity for us. So that's going to be, to answer your question, Andy, that we still believe very much in our legacy business. In fact, I've got to be careful because I use words like legacy to describe it, and I've been admonished internally for that because they're like, hey, people don't want to think they work for the legacy part of the company. They want to work for the cool tech part of the company. So we've talked about it as things of it's our core business, and it is. And to be very frank, it's what pays the bills. It's what allows us to make the investments in the 10 companies that we've acquired, the new technologies that we've invested in. That business is really providing the capital for us to do that. And we'd be remiss if we didn't invest it in the future. Now, of course, we have to continue to invest it in that business as well. And to that end, we built an entirely new factory this past year down in South Carolina for that business, for those products in particular, because we see a future where people are going to want more of those. And in particular, if you think about just the electrification of everything in your home, now think about driving an EV. And it's one thing to have your power go out and it's an inconvenience. Maybe it's more than that if you're working from home or if your kids are learning from home. But if you can't drive anywhere because you don't have power for your car, we think that generators are going to be a big part of the kind of energy landscape as, maybe for emergencies, right? As a potential use case there for a long, long time. This is not something, this transition that we're undergoing, they use natural gas or LP. They're actually quite clean when they operate. That's something that we see as a growing market and has been for the 25 years that we've been in the category.
I liked what you said about the digitization of electricity and selling it to your neighbors and selling it back to the grid and storing it in a fuel cell attached to your house. So I can see this as a business that for the next 25 to 30 years could triple or quadruple yet.
Absolutely, absolutely. We're going to add you to the IR team, Andy, the investor relations team. So, thank you.
Thanks, Andy. Any other questions? Oh, Mr. Clear. I'm just jumping down. I'm going rogue. I'm going rogue.
Don't hurt yourself, Mark. Don't hurt yourself. Safety first.
I saw somebody tumble off a stage like this once, and
It's
it
not
was
pretty.
not pretty.
It's not
Yeah,
pretty.
Yeah. So you talked about workforce challenges and talent acquisition. You also talked about being in a relatively suburban or even rural area. So could you talk about workforce transportation and how you get people there, those that are coming, people in manufacturing obviously are coming in, and also thinking about the carbon footprint of
Right.
that.
Yeah, I'll tell you, this has been a challenge for us for a long, long time. Our manufacturing plants are located in rural communities. And so we're in Eagle, Wisconsin. You ever been to Eagle, Wisconsin? Right? 600 people. We have more people in our plant in Eagle, Wisconsin than the town has population. We have 700 people in our plant. So you think about, well, how do you do that? Well, you bring people in from outside of Eagle. We have a plant in Whitewater, Wisconsin, a plant in Jefferson, Wisconsin. We have a plant in Berlin, Wisconsin. Anybody know where Berlin is? Half hour west of Oshkosh, right? That's out in, you talk about rural, kind of Wisconsin, that's about as rural as it gets, right? And in fact, the workforce for many years at the plant in Berlin was people who, they started out their day milking cows, and they came to work for us because they needed the health benefits, they needed to supplement their farm income, with additional work. And so, the idea of transportation has been a challenge for us, especially as we've grown, even to the point where, we've thought, okay, we have this kind of rural footprint for factories. Is that the right footprint for the future? Do we need to be closer to mass transit systems? And we've evaluated that to the point of stopping short of actually doing it. But I think in the future, that's a possible outcome. I will say one of the ways we've dealt with that is more automation, right? So I mean, this is a transition I think most manufacturers are faced with. And again, automation, for some reason, that's become kind of almost a bad word to talk about. Like you're disintermediating people. You're disintermediating people that don't want that job anyway, to be very frank. I mean, this is, a lot of times what you're automating are the repetitive tasks, are the tasks that, oftentimes come with them, certain injuries, or certain challenges, the monotony of, those types of roles are best for automation. And we can redeploy people into, higher use products and higher use value streams. So automation is one way we're dealing with it, but the transportation challenge is not a small thing. And I think here in Wisconsin, we have a real challenge. I mean, even in the Milwaukee area, there's no transportation. You've got busing, you've got the buses. There's no light rail. I guess we have the hop now that runs downtown, that little loop on the trolley. But we need infrastructure around transportation. We need to make investments there. We didn't invest in the rail line between Milwaukee and Madison. I think that was a big miss. I think we should have done that personally. That's just me. I just think, when you invest in transportation, oftentimes you'll see things that, that come along for that, the investment that comes alongside of that. And I think you got to take a bigger view on some of that stuff. And again, not to devolve into politics, but, a kind of a non-political view on some of those things and how they impact the communities and, whether it's carbon footprint or whether it's, access to labor pools that, are further away from where they're needed.
Hi, my name is Carol Casey, and as a person who has been looking into intentional living and is interested in sustainability and Green New Deal sorts of things, that's where I have come in contact with generators. So you may want to partner with tiny home companies,
Yep.
community builders, Green New Deal, lobby in Washington to
Yep.
be included in that. It might be some
Absolutely.
places for you to expand. Additionally, I know I don't look like it, but I happen to have information on cutting-edge cyber crimes that are a security breach. And
Wow.
I've had trouble delivering this information, and if you would like some for your company, I'm happy to speak with you.
Absolutely. Cybersecurity is, for any company, ours included, is a critical area, a business area that it's frightening, actually. Especially when you think about our products. If somebody could take control of the product or do other things, that's something you got to worry about. So appreciate that. And we're always trying to learn more about how to protect, not only the information of the people who own our products, but also, our employees, the data they have. Data is that's the next generation of value chain. In terms of maximizing value in a company, is taking the data that you get and synthesizing that data into either actions for the company or in different business models that you can monetize. But in doing that, you open up all kinds of cybersecurity potential risks. So definitely top of mind.
Something you guys never used to think about. Why would you?
No, and actually I find it annoying, to be honest. I just, it's basically it's a different form of criminal activity, right? So it's no different than somebody walking in to a brick and mortar store and shoplifting, or they're stealing information, but it's pretty dangerous stuff, and in terms of what that can mean to the individual whose data has been compromised, or the company whose data has been compromised. So it's unfortunate, but it is something we have to deal with, and it's a sign of the times, I guess.
Yep, it's a new day for sure. I don't see any other hands. You got your question answered. Oh, one more in the back. Am I running back there? Are you
coming up? It's a race.
It's a race. I would toss the mic, but I won't go that way.
Fascinating, thank you. So with recent supply chain struggles, there was a lot more focus on potential reshoring initiatives. So more of a general question, do you think this is going to take hold, and what is it going to look like in the next few years?
It's a great question. And by the way, supply chain, if you know anybody in the supply chain world, I always tell our people, just give them a hug, because it's been a really difficult couple of years to be a supply chain person or a person in sourcing or logistics. It's just been I've never seen anything like it in my career. Just being able to get parts from point A to point B has been a challenge. And so this idea of onshoring and shortening supply chains, just in general, right? However you want to define that, reshoring. We've done a number of things over the years to bring more manufacturing back to the U.S. at Generac. If you walked into one of our plants in Whitewater, as an example, you would see a lot of manufacturing, not just assembly. We're actually winding, it's called an alternator, but think of it as an electric motor in the middle of that generator. We actually produce those. We take the raw copper wire, the raw steel, and we spin them, and we create the heart of the machine right there. That used to be a component that we sourced from Asia. And we brought it back about 7 years ago because it made sense financially. To be honest, they're heavy, they're expensive, and our scale, as we grew, we could invest in the automation to be competitive with outsourcing that to Asia. I think it's always still going to come down to that equation that is the business equation of what does it cost you to source something and bring it to your factories to use versus manufacturing it. Now, I would say the equation's changed. Over the last 2 years, the cost of logistics is much higher. The cost of, the cost of a longer supply chain is much greater. The cost of geopolitical risk. We source from Russia. We did up until about a year ago. We're sourcing radiators from Russia. Why Russia? Because they mine a lot of copper out of the ground, a lot of aluminum. They create a lot of aluminum. That's what goes into a radiator. We woke up one day, they marched into the Ukraine, and we said, we can't do this. We had to change our entire supply chain for those types of products. So the geopolitical risks that come with China, what's going to happen in China? What happens if China goes into Taiwan? What are we going to do as a business? We still have a very healthy supply chain in China. So, that equation of sourcing versus manufacturing is constantly changing. And you have to be ever pressure testing that with your teams. You have to be asking questions. You've got to be on top of the geopolitical situation in the world. You have to understand what the costs are, right? And this is and this is why I love accountants, right? And so I'm one, this is a great way to understand the business. I ask a lot of really annoying questions of our team because they're deep cost-focused questions, because it gets to the heart of that issue of whether you're going to source something externally or whether you're going to manufacture it. I do think that some of the policy environment is changing. I think we've got some better policy in place. We've got the political will to take some of these really important strategic industries, whether they be semiconductors or certain medical industry devices, things like that, that need to be here in the U.S. And I think we definitely have the political will to do that. And you've seen that come out in the Build Back Better bill, and also in the Inflation Reduction Act. There's been dollars that have been earmarked for many of these things to incentivize companies like Generac or others to bring some of that manufacturing back to the U.S. Those are, I think, a little bit different because they have a strategic nature to them in terms of the strategy as a populace here in the U.S. But certain industries, I'll be very frank, I don't think are ever coming back. There's just certain things that get built or get manufactured where it'd be incredibly difficult to do in the U.S., either because of our regulatory structure here, whether it be environmental regulation or some other regulatory environment, or some other structural impediment to doing that. But I do think that as a business leader, we have to continually challenge ourselves on that equation, and that includes even the political landscape as that changes and what that might mean for incentives or in some cases penalties.
Challenge ourselves and challenge elected officials. And
absolutely.
And well, we're right at time. This was great. Paul, are you nope? Okay.
Awesome.
Like I said, we were laughing during the prep call. We said, we were half an hour in, and we're like, maybe we need to bump the next couple of guests because we could pick this up at the next one.
We can just keep going.
But thank you so much for your time.
I'll do a fantasy football thing. I promise. Next time.
All right. Well, if you'll do that, I'll talk to him.
I'm in.
I'll talk to him. And thank you for your vision. Thank you for your leadership, and thank you for keeping this company here and growing.
I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you guys, and appreciate the opportunity to dialogue with you, Mark, in particular. But this has been great, and we love telling the story. It's an easy story to tell. So thanks for listening to me this morning. Appreciate it.
All right.